it to the table as we head into the first match of the week. As we said, it is Sottle versus HelloLeeroy. Sottle going to be bringing the Shaman, Rogue, and Warlock up against the Paladin, Warlock, and Warrior of HelloLeeroy.
So it does look like HelloLeeroy had his mage banned by Sottle, which is probably a tactical decision, I would have thought.
Sottle, I don't know if he brought Druid this week. He brought Druid last week, so it may have been banned here. So it's going to see the first patron of the tournament for HelloLeeroy. Oh, patron. First warrior of the tournament. I'm so used to saying patron warrior because it's the only warrior that we've seen. The first warrior of the tournament for HelloLeeroy. And it's going to be the actually maybe one of the first rogues we've seen as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think we've seen rogue yet in this tournament, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of Sottle does with this rogue. It's known for being very good against most things, right?
Yeah, rogue, especially against Paladin, especially if you can time that board clear incredibly well. Sap is such an effective tool against some of the threats that Paladin throws down. And given what I'm seeing here with the Zombie Chow, with the Lower Theb and the Coghammer, are we going to see a return to a kind of mid-range Shaman, mid-range Paladin from HelloLeeroy here?
I mean, we saw the Zombie Chow last week, and it turned out to be a token druid.
Token Paladin.
Token Paladin,
we're saying the wrong class every single time. It's brilliant.
But the Fan of Knives is obviously a great answer to the muster for battle.
100%. Yeah.
So that's always good to keep in your mulligan. The Zombie Chow does come out straight from HelloLeeroy there.
Tyrion Fordring, Lower Theb, Sludge Belcher. Now, it could still be that Flood Paladin, but it's kind of looking, based on this hand, to be shaping up to more of a mid-range here for HelloLeeroy. We can see, I would imagine, just given what we're seeing here, it's either Malilock or Oil Rogue. I have seen a resurgence of Oil Rogue on ladder. He's even going to backstab straight away, just deal with that Zombie Chow threat ASAP.
I don't think Sottle is the type of player to bring Mali Rogue to the board. I think he's kind of a traditional player. He's probably going to bring Oil Rogue. I mean, it kind of looks that way at the moment, but you never know. If a Malygos does get top deck, then I'll eat my words.
Okay, so the Argent Squire kind of leads us maybe away from the mid-range Paladin, and it could still be that Flood Paladin that we saw previously. He's gonna. Oh, okay. This maybe to me might be spelling out that there's definitely a Fan of Knives around the corner.
Yeah, just kind of setting up for that next turn, which is something you see all too often. Keeper of Alderman comes out though.
Do you like the Coin Keeper of Alderman here, Dan? Because I really like the Coin Keeper of Alderman.
I think you've always got to assume the Fan of Knives is in the hand of the Rogue, so you're always going to be worried about playing for that Master of Battle. So I think, yeah, Keeper of Alderman and just making that 3/3 is a very solid play. So personally, yeah, I think that's a good play.
I feel the same way, because then you can you can muster for battle afterwards, and if something like a Tomb Pillager comes down, which we know that is in Sottle's hand, then you have the tools to deal with it. You can change your 3/3 in from the Argent Squire, and then use the muster for battle weapon, trade in, take off that Tomb Pillager off the board.
We'll see what the decision is going to be on this one. I mean, there is always it's down to kind of whether he's considering the Fan of Knives. I mean, there is obviously the muster for battle is the...
He's going to go for it.
I mean, you're on curve in terms of mana and things, and like, it's kind of down to as well, how likely is it that Fan of Knives is in hand of your opponent? It's just kind of unfortunate that it happens to be the perfect answer right there.
Okay, there's not end of the world for HelloLeeroy. You can see there his face says, okay, I kind of was expecting that. You're playing slightly off curve for the Rogue here, which kind of works in HelloLeeroy's favour. And he has the coin for a 5-drop. You're not going to play Keeper of Alderman straight up here, but he's got the coin for either Sludge Belcher or Lower Theb. I imagine either of one of those will come down, but I think that could be a sap target.
I mean, he had to muster for battle at some point, right? And you've just got to play the game of hoping it's not quite in the hand yet. And the longer you wait to play it, the more likely they're going to have it in their hand. So
yeah, I was about to say that you've got to play the odds as well. Like the sooner you play it, the less likely. But I like the Sludge Belcher here because, I mean, you kind of, to some extent, you want to save Lower Theb to protect other minions from spells as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you were in Sottle's position now, Dan, what would you do? I personally wouldn't mind the SAP SI7 just to have some board presence potentially, but you could also just throw down your Azure Drake for the card draw. You don't have preparations, obviously, so you can't use that sprint. But in my opinion, those are the two options that he has.
You could also even backstab, then SI7 agent, and then hit with face, and you get rid of the Belcher. The only reason I wouldn't SAP is because the likes of Tyrion, you know that is in the deck. Obviously, he's not going to be able to see that in the hand, but you kind of want to save it for that reason.
I guess there are two theories when you're coming to sapping with a rogue. If you already have board presence and want to maintain tempo, you can sap something like a Sludge Belcher. Whereas now that he doesn't have a board presence, he is a little bit behind in that aspect. Sap would be saved for something like Tyrion. It really depends on the sort of the board state that it is. I wouldn't mind trading in here then Keeper of Aldermaning my own Sludge Belcher. But, because essentially you're going to have a 3-1 after this trade, because you might use your face or you use Abusive Sergeant. Then you just Keeper of Alderman, or you could just throw down that lower Theb on Kev.
Or you could Keeper of Alderman your Abusive Sergeant, I guess, is another play.
Yeah, for sure.
You know that the taunt's already there. There's going to be another one dropping afterwards.
There's a couple of plays.
But I think low Theb, I think that's a fine play.
It is for sure, yeah, and it means there's I imagine we'll just see another Azure Drake come down here, but there are other plays he could make. You could Tomb Pillager, trade in, just re-dagger up.
I mean, lower Theb against a rogue is always hard to take when you are playing rogue, because the majority of your deck is just spells and removal. But Sottle does have the Tomb Pillager to kind of just answer back, just put some presence on board.
So, I want to know what you think, Munch, because this is a different lineup that we're seeing from Sottle this week. He hasn't gone for the all-out aggro lineup here. Do you think that's kind of like a lesson learned for him, or?
I think it's a matter of kind of feeling out the competition somewhat. We've talked about this in previous weeks about how it is going to be a matter of learning what your opponent's going to be bringing and maybe trying to play things to counter that. But also, I find it interesting that he's brought the Rogue anyway, because to some extent the Rogue is definitely a tangent to what we've been seeing in the Premiership in general. So I think this might be perhaps maybe something he thinks is going to be a spanner in the works for the other opponents, because Rogue isn't necessarily something we see all that much on ladder either. So this is definitely something that maybe his opponents aren't going to be expecting, and kind of just almost like a wildcard deck that people won't necessarily know how to play around.
2 Sea Giants being in the hand for HelloLeeroy. I mean, that's usually you'd be like, yeah, okay, that's great, but because the amount of removal that's in the deck of the Rogue, he's not going to have a chance to be able to play both of those anytime soon, really. I think he's going to probably have to play them as quite high mana minions.
It feels really clunky, I agree with you, just because this is that Flood Paladin that we saw him bring last week. It has a kind of mid-range feel to it, but it just feels really clunky to have 2 Sea Giants in your hand with no real way to flood the board apart from your hero power. And we know that there is 2 Saps in Sottle's hand, so if he's playing them for high cost value, then those Saps are going to get insane value, right? They're going to be ridiculously good Saps.
I mean, but you're going to be sapping those Sea Giants, but they could also be played again for even cheaper. That's my worry about sapping one of those. I think other than the sap, he hasn't got a real answer for those Sea Giants, and they're just going to come back into play so quickly if there are enough minions on board.
Okay, this is a really nice play from Sottle here. He threw down the Azure Drake, then used the SI7 to clear onto lower Theb, and then Prep eviscerated to clear the entire board, and it's going to make this is going to be almost impossible, I think, just based on the hand that we see for HelloLeeroy to come back, because Tyrion going to come down next turn. There's 2 Saps in the hand of Sottle. It's not looking great for HelloLeeroy right now.
I mean, after all that removal from Sottle, yeah, it's looking even worse right now. And what do you do here? Do you just
do Blessing of Kings, right?
Yeah,
but then that plays into Sap in itself, or just gets traded into.
I think you're out of other options though. I mean, you just play Dude Kings, maybe even Abusive as well, just for the sake of having things on the board. But it's so painful to have that double Sea Giant while there's absolutely nothing on the board. It's kind of limits your options so much, and especially when you're playing against a deck like what Sottle is bringing to the table. He's never really going to be looking to flood the board anyway.
Sap Tinkers here. You basically redagger Sap Tinkers is a really great play. There are other options. Obviously, he can just go for the sprint because he pretty much has decent board control regardless, right? He can just trade 2 things in, use his face to trade into the 5/5. But I just think the fact that you're basically setting up a 2-turn timer if you do the Sap redagger Tinkers, it's really strong.
There's a lot of damage that's going to be hitting that Paladin, and the only answer really is Tyrion. We know there's another Sap in hand, but HelloLeeroy isn't going to know that. Now, if I was HelloLeeroy, I probably wouldn't want to drop either of these Sea Giants, because you don't want to give information away about your deck. Sottle might only think there's 1 Sea Giant in this deck, or he might not think there's any at all. So if you're presuming you're going to lose the game, you just want to kind of hide as much info as possible.
So right now, he's dead, right? This is game over because we know the Sap's there. I mean, that was the correct play to make, go for Tyrion, because you're not expecting the second Sap, but...
Yeah, that's the miracle of being able to see both of the hands. We're always at the upper hand over the players because we can see the opponent, but that is going to be the first game going the way of HelloLeeroy, sorry.
No, it's Sottle. Yeah, Sottle brought the
was the wrong way around. Yeah, so Sottle is going to be able to take his first one. So HelloLeeroy now with 2 losses on the board overall. He's now 6 for 2. So Sottle starting off this series right, and actually with a deck that was somewhat not unorthodox, but not exactly what we were expecting. Do you think that was the reason that HelloLeeroy lost this one?
It's interesting because I-Series we actually saw a lot of Oil Rogue from the slightly more, I guess, well-known players who have had a lot of experience with Rogue. Yep. There was Mali Rogue and a lot of Oil Rogue being seen at I-Series. And it is something that's always remained there in the meta, and it will always come out against these kind of mid-range decks like mid-range Paladin because Sap has such insane value. Things like Paladins can be very easily cleared by Deadly Poison, Blade Flurry, or the Fan of Knives like you saw early on. And the thing about Rogue is if you draw the right tools at the right time and you can get those combos working, it can pretty much beat any class. And that Oil Rogue especially, you saw there, the double Sap was insanely good for Sottle in just securing that game for him.
I think having 2 Sea Giants didn't help for HelloLeeroy in that hand as well. It's probably one of the first games we've seen HelloLeeroy draw badly. I mean, he's been having quite favourable draws in the past couple of weeks, so to see him on the other end of the spectrum is kind of interesting.
Interestingly enough, he drew 2 Sea Giants very early on last week versus Green Sheep, but he had such good board control that was like a 3 mana.
I was going to say he had like a 3 or 2 mana.
It was a turn 3 Sea Giant because he propped his own Haunted Creeper and it was going up against Zoo, who'd already flooded the board a little bit itself. Sea Giant came down turn 3. That's exactly what you want in this kind of Paladin. Against a Rogue, he lost so much tempo because of that Fan of Knives. You know, regardless, I don't know how much it would have played out if he'd gone for that Coin Keeper of Alderman play, but you have to take the risk, I think, right? You have to take the risk on that Muster for Battle because if you can keep it up and alive, then you have a very early ability to get those Sea Giants down.
Absolutely. Well, we're into our second game, and it is going to be Shaman up against Paladin. So Sottle, by the looks of things, I mean, those cards to me spell out face Shaman.
Yes.
I feel like HelloLeeroy is just psyching himself up with a bit of singing.
He's going to start slapping his face in a minute. Let's go!
He looks like he could be like singing something like Eminem. He's definitely getting in the zone.
Tiger.
Yeah, getting in the zone right now. I like that from HelloLeeroy.
I don't know what Sottle just said towards camera there. I think he said something about...
2 games in a row, maybe?
Yeah, something about him getting Zombie Chow turn 1 every single time. But he wasn't very happy about it. Hopefully it won't kind of put him on tilt for the rest of this series because, I mean, face Shaman against this kind of Flood Paladin, my only concern is that when the taunts come up, that can really affect.
It's a clock for me, in my opinion, this matchup. I definitely think it's a bit of a clock.
But Sottle's got to start going face.
Again, Sottle's going to start going face, right? You're going to want to flood the board ASAP because you know realistically that the Shaman doesn't have the tools to deal with your board. Sottle unhappy with the Muster for Battle.
And now we see the Sea Giant in the hand of HelloLeeroy, and that's going to be a lot better in this game because there is no removal from Sottle.
He can play it now, right?
Yep.
Feral Wolves come down.
Plays into it perfectly.
There we go. And,
turn 4
Sea Giant.
And that is a terrifying concept when...
Oh, he could also Gormok.
Oh my goodness.
Interesting.
I think I would go for the Sea Giant.
Would you? Because I'd personally go for Gormok. I don't know why. I think this is also a great play.
I think just having the 8/8 on board, there's nothing to deal with that this early, whereas Gormok, you get the 4 damage, you do get some clear, but it's not like you're going to struggle to deal with the taunts in the long run.
I guess because you're going to trade some of your 1/1s into this, into these Spirit Wolves regardless. You want to make sure you get the most value out of a flooded board possible with the Sea Giant. I think both plays were okay, but this definitely puts more pressure on Sottle.
I mean, just Face Shaman has nothing to deal with that 8/8. That's the only concern.
No hex.
I mean, even to be fair,
without basically losing your win condition.
Yeah.
And you can see he doesn't even have the Crackles on board in hand, which, you know, realistically a double Crackle is probably the best way to deal with the Sea Giant from this deck, or maybe a Lava Burst and a Crackle.
And even then you're kind of praying a little bit that you actually get the rolls on the Crackle.
And this is basically my experience with Face Shaman on ladder, is I just don't draw how I should be drawing. I mean, we've seen Sottle on his stream, he's been kind of tinkering with this deck quite a little bit.
A lot,
with the 2-drops, especially like we spoke about earlier, and we do see 2 Flame Tongue Totems, which is a questionable decision from some. Some aren't sure whether Flame Tongue Totems should be in this deck, especially 2 rather than 1. I don't even think Sottle himself is confident in having 2 Flame Tongue Totems.
He actually said, I think on stream, or at least on Twitter, why do people run Flame Tongue Totems in this deck? Because, yeah, I mean, you could see there he concedes straight away. And look at HelloLeeroy's face. He's very happy with the win there. And I really like that deck from HelloLeeroy, by the way, because if you do get those draws and you do flood the board, it's so easy as a Paladin to get small minions down and then make the Sea Giant so cost effective. It's one of, in my opinion, the best class to make it happen because of Muster for Battle as well.
Yeah.
And this is the third game now we've now seen him bring this deck, and the second game where he had a basically turn 3, turn 4 Sea Giant. And that's exactly what you want from this deck.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what you want from any deck that's running a Sea Giant. When you're playing Zoolock and you roll high on your first implosion, it's the best feeling in the world. But we're going to be heading into the third game of this series, so I'm intrigued to see what deck these guys decide to bring in now, because we've obviously got 2 decks left. In fact, let's bring up the decks that we've got remaining for these 2 guys, and we didn't actually go over the bans earlier, so I'll just bring those up as well. Looks like the bans for these 2 guys were Warrior and Mage. So
Warrior
you're right
and
about the Mage,
okay.
but remaining is going to be obviously the Face Shaman still there, and Warlock, and then Warlock Warrior.
I'm not surprised to see both the Warrior and Mage banned for either of these, because Sottle is well known for playing Grim Patron, and HelloLeeroy over the past few weeks has been known to play Freeze Mage. So the bans, they're good bans. I like these bans. Yeah,
I mean, he said that he was trying to change his mage up a little bit. He wasn't going to. He didn't tell me exactly which mage he was going for, but he said everyone's expecting me to bring Freeze Mage, but I'm hoping to bring something different. Ooh, this is a really good start for both players, in my opinion. Obviously, you do like the Argent Squire against something like an aggro Shaman. The Abusive Sergeant will help that trade up into something like a Tunnel Trog, for instance, that we can see. But this is a great opening hand for both players. There are a couple of things I would change for HelloLeeroy, but Sottle right here is thinking, I'm very happy with how this is turning out.
Yeah. I don't know whether you keep Crackle as like a removal. I hate using Crackle as a removal, so I can understand him throwing that away. As the Rockbiter has now come out, would you think he would regret that decision of throwing that away in the mulligan, or do you still think it was the right decision?
Yeah, there's nothing to buff your Tunnel Trog up right now. But realistically, with the hand you've got, you're probably going to be playing minions on curve as opposed to anything else. It's going to coin out the Flame Imp, which obviously is great, but we do know that Sottle could potentially clear. He has got Crackle too, so a couple of options here for Sottle. You could either throw down the Knife Juggler, or just play Crackle into the Flame Imp.
See, if he hadn't have mulliganed the Crackle anyway, he would have had this, and that's... The Rockbiter used as removal is something we see quite a lot in this deck, so I'm happy to see him use that as the removal as he threw away the Crackle, which is obviously another form of removal. But the possible 6 damage from Crackle is obviously very important.
I like proccing the shield from HelloLeeroy here. It also makes HelloLeeroy's turn a little bit more awkward, because I imagine he would have wanted to be abusive and then trade the Divine Shield into the Tunnel Trog. But probably the best option that he has now is just to be... Oh, he's going to do it anyway because he's scared of it going out of control. I was going to say there was 2 options. He could just throw down the Haunted Creeper and trade into the Leopard Gnome. But this also works too, very, very well.
But this is another deck that could just spiral out of control for Sottle here, really.
Yeah.
Like, if the Zoo picks up and it gets the Sea Giant on board again, I mean, it's going to be tough for Sottle to get back into it, but he's got tools to put some damage in, as we see the Doom Guard off the top for HelloLeeroy. Yeah,
that's an interesting addition. That's something that I think HelloLeeroy ran last week in his Zoo deck. He included one of the Doom Guards. It's something that we saw Board Control in the first week bring 2 of, just to try and counter. This is a great draw for, or great roll as well for Sottle, and he's in a commanding position right now.
Yeah, he's going to be very, very happy with those juggles. And the 5/2 knife juggler on board, surely it's got to be the Implosion. I suppose you could Argus,
Implosion,
but
yeah.
I would say Implosion, just for the sake of having the minions on board, is just going to be so much more valuable than roll
esports. Yeah, and Sottle shaking his head because we all know how it feels to go.
I think it was actually, it might have been today, it might have been yesterday, that Sottle actually tweeted, I'm going to stream today, I'll stream Hearthstone, and the length that I'll stream it for is completely dependent on how many 4s we get with Implosion. Something along those lines. So definitely not a card that's close to Sottle's heart.
This is a tough decision now. Do you just go for the Peddler into Sea Giant, or do you now... I think you have to start clearing. You can't really play that tempo game anymore. You can't play the Doom Guard because you lose too many valuable things. I guess you have to throw down the Argus, in my opinion. You've got to try and clear this Flame Tongue off the board as effectively as you can, right? That would be my initial impression.
I think Peddler getting a 1-drop, playing the Sea Giant for 2, and then being able to use that 1-drop is strong. It depends what he gets. But there's nothing that really stands out for me.
Yeah, I guess you can clear that. I guess you could just clear the 1/1s, right? You just leave the Flame Tongue up.
Well, the only thing that's going to be used with the Flame Tongue... Oh, I have lost my mic.
Your microphone has gone.
I can still hear you.
Dan seems to have lost his microphone. I don't mind clearing the Flame Tongue, but I also definitely wouldn't have mind just clearing off the board as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I think clearing the Flame Tongue was the correct decision here, because Argent Horse Rider comes down, and that would have been really impactful.
I was going to say, it plays into future cards that could come out, and obviously we can see that you just drew Argent Horse Rider. That could have already been in the hand, but I mean, what do you do with your... do you just trade into the 2-1 here, play...
I would actually crackle the Sea Giant, hope you roll a 6, and then trade
the
it.
Horse Rider here.
Yeah, or 5. And again, like we said last game, it was exactly the same versus the Paladin. You don't have tools as a Face Shaman to deal with big minions. So if big minions come down early, you're really, really screwed.
And this is the issue now as well, is we've mentioned this before. If you then use your cards like Crackle, like your Rockbite or weapons to clear all of the minions, how do you then win the game? Because you've got to be able to have those cards to finish off the game later on.
I mean, it's a really tough position for Sottle, because you have to deal with this 8/8, because now you're racing against, well, huge amounts of damage every single turn. I think maybe he's going to say, I hope I draw some burn. He is. He's just going to say, I hope I draw burn here. Because if he draws Doomhammer next turn, he's won the game, right? Or if he had, well, almost won the game anyway.
Assuming that his board isn't cleared, he's won the game. But I mean,
there's
so many 1/1s. Why would you not clear?
Defender's going to come down, right? Regardless. So Defender comes down and he draws Doomhammer. He's lost anyway.
Let's see. Defender, I would expect on the Peddler. Yeah.
I mean, that's the best option, because again, like you said, there's nothing for Face Shaman to deal with such high damage minions. He doesn't run BGH, he doesn't run Hex. There's no way you're getting through this 9/9 unless you're using your burn. And HelloLeeroy knows this. You know, HelloLeeroy exactly knows that as long as he's got this 9/9 on the board, and I guess there's Earth Shock, but yeah, like you said, you only classically run 1 Earth Shock in a Face Shaman deck. So when you've got to get through 2 taunts, especially a 9/9, and even if you Earth Shock the 9/9, all you're doing is
still got an 8/7 on the board.
All you're doing is getting it down to an 8/8. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I'm back. Dan is back. Dan has joined us once more, but that is going to be the 3rd game of the series going the way of HelloLeeroy. So still holding strong on this one, and I'm curious as to what's going through the head of Sottle right now. Whether he goes for that Face Shaman, because obviously you have to win on each of these classes. Face Shaman, generally speaking, assuming you draw correctly, I mean, it's the same as kind of Face Hunter or whatever. If you go face hard enough and you draw the right cards, you're pretty solidly in there with a victory. Yeah, the difference for me between Face Hunter and Face Shaman is you can't get punished when playing against Face Shaman for building your board up. You never get punished. There's no tools that Face Shaman employ. I have seen some Face Shamans start running Lightning Storm to punish the board build, and they have it on with the Tunnel Trog. You get that overload, and it can then start to aid. But you have to take out some face damage to put in some Lightning Storms. So there is that balance there. But for things like Face Hunter, you get punished for building the board up because of Unleash the Hounds. You build the board up thinking you're safe and happy, and suddenly you get 7 damage worth of hounds coming at your face, and plus the fact that it synergizes with the kill command and things like that. So yeah, Face Shaman is I think a little bit more tricky to make work. It does better against some of the more control-orientated decks, which Face Hunter classically did badly against, because it doesn't matter usually for Face Shaman if the taunts are there, because they have the spells, which will be burning through that. So, okay, well, we're into our 4th game of this series now. HelloLeeroy down to his last deck. He just needs to win with this warrior, and it looks like it is going to be the Warlock coming out from Sottle. And I mean, quite clearly a Zoo deck, and as you can see, Grim Patron. So there's not a whole lot of discussing what these decks might be for these guys, but we've seen HelloLeeroy's Patron in the past couple of weeks as well.
A Zoolock running Bran Bronzebeard as well.
Actually, I run Bran Bronzebeard on my Zoolock as well, just because it synergizes so well with the battle cries that you've got.
Yeah, you've got Argus, you've got Abusive,
you've got Dark Peddler. There's so many things that Brown Bronzebeard synergizes well with in Zoo. So
that's a fifth of your deck, in fact.
Exactly.
Just those cards alone.
It's a fantastic start here for Sottle, by the way. Next turn, you could even just start applying the pressure.
Synergizes with Leroy, so you can basically fill their board and
yeah,
then drop
yeah,
your
there
Sea
you go.
Giant. Oh,
there you go.
I'm not surprised that he's gone for Warlock this game either. I think if he had just ran Shaman again, kind of those past 2 games would have been in his head. Just kind of forget about those games, try and get a win on the board with the Zulok, and then use the Shaman if you get that win. Because at least you can get a read into what deck he's using, and then that's when you pop the face Shaman.
So I like this turn from Sottle. He's got 2 mana. He's going to start applying the pressure to the Warrior. And as Patron, you know that in the early turns, it's very difficult for them to deal with fairly full boards. And actually, it's a really awful position for HelloLeeroy here, because you play your Acolyte of Pain, and it gets killed by the Flame Imp for free. You don't get the card draw out of it. You play your Frothing Berserker on curve. That you know this is going to go down. It was an awkward turn 3, but I think that was the best move to make.
Okay, well, we'll see what the response... I mean, do you just drop Gang Boss here?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I feel like Gang Boss as a card is the kind of card where even if it's not like gonna win you the board control or anything, it's just such a good card to have down on the board that there's so many situations where you just play it anyway.
Well, the interesting thing is it actually does get you board control because of how obviously Imp Gang Boss works. I like this though from HelloLeeroy. He's got that Death Ride. That was the obvious turn 4 play there. Next turn he can probably Sludge Belcher, and then you're just waiting for patrons or trying to get card draw out of a double Acolyte on turn 6 maybe. So there are options now here for HelloLeeroy.
Well, if we know HelloLeeroy well, we know he can draw when he wants it.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't be surprised if a patron does kind of just pop up very soon. But he's got the Sludge Belcher here. I think that's fine. Kind of, you just want to now start protecting your life total because you are concerned.
Yeah.
But he is instead going to go for the slam.
I actually like this. And you play your Acolyte now, right? And then you just trade into 2/2. You save yourself a bit of health. If you played the Sludge, it just goes down for free, right? This is, I feel, was just a better play. You can start drawing towards those things that really matter, like the patrons. And he has another Despite in hand, so that will be useful for setting up patrons in the future. If he didn't have another Despite, I think he would have had to do that anyway. But yeah, I think it's a good move from HelloLeeroy.
Yeah, the slam coming off the top was quite important there, I think.
For sure.
It gave him the decision of mixing up that play. And like you said, the Sludge Belcher was obviously a decision, but it was traded too easily. Personally, I would be a bit scared about my life total now, but now I see the Grim Patron kind of coming in, then maybe, I don't know, maybe you can get this board back, but at the moment this is looking quite strong for Sottle.
Yeah, but also this turn coming around for HelloLeeroy, he can Despite again, slam into the Knife Juggler, and then basically clear the board for free.
I think the key thing as well is if you look in the hand of Sottle, he needs to get some good draws right now.
For sure.
Because he's run out of steam at this rate. The eggs aren't going to do anything by themselves. You do have the Activator in the Wolf Alpha, but the thing is, you need a turn before you can actually attack with the eggs at that point. So it's...
And also now that the Patron's going to start coming down, there is no Hellfire or anything in a Zoo. So Zoo as itself does struggle to deal with patrons. My only concern is there's nothing else other than the Deathbite to activate these patrons with. So if you end up getting 2 patrons, I just feel that that's a fairly weak turn in terms of just getting 2 patrons on the board. And plus, if a Whirlwind comes down,
well, that's why I like the double leg play. I think he's saying, okay, you want to get some patrons out, feel free, double Whirlwind, and then you'll give me 2 4/4 Nerubians here.
And as well, when your opponent is on 10 HP, 2 4/4s are basically the end of the game.
Do you just boom here, I guess? Would you just boom here? I mean, I honestly, there's a couple of options, but if I was in HelloLeeroy's position, I would say, okay, what's the worst that could happen if I just throw boom down? Maybe one of the boom bots procs one of his eggs. That's the only risk you have here, throwing boom down. You don't want to use your Deathbite, do you? Realistically, not yet. Unless you're going to start flooding patrons, but you don't have the opportunity to flood that many patrons.
Maybe play with the I was about to say with the Armor Smith, and then at least you build up armor enough to survive this next turn.
I guess you're slightly worried potentially about a power overwhelming or double power overwhelming on that 2/2. So
the real question will be whether he draws into something that allows him to remove both patrons. And I think he actually can, if he were to implosion...
It's a 66% chance, right, to clear the patrons if you implosion the 3/3.
He could use his Alpha and his Abusive Sergeant to clear the other one.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So now it's a 100% chance.
So that's going to be important, actually, clearing both these patrons. Really important. And he's going to be able to proc one of his eggs, possibly both if he fancies it.
To be honest, that actually... I mean, we could see maybe a Brawl come out? Do you think he's running
Nah.
Brawl in the Patron?
I don't think patrons run Brawl.
I mean, it could be like something that he's teched in, but
That's why I
mean,
felt bad about Patron, right? That's why I felt bad, because if you only have 2 patrons on the board, it's much easier to clear.
This is the kind of situation where it's like, if he had drawn an execute, actually this isn't too bad of a situation, because I mean, you clear almost the full board, you can execute the Nerubian, but it doesn't have the execute in hand. I mean, do you just simply go for the Whirlwind anyway to clear most of the board, then drop maybe Sludge Belcher?
Yeah, so there are 2 options. I think you could trade your Armor Smith into the that guy, Whirlwind, and then play Sludge Belcher. I think that's an okay turn, and then you can armor up. That at least keeps you alive. And then if you want to get past that Sludge Belcher, you have to trade at least one of your. Well, you may even have to trade 2 of your 4/3 or 4. You know, basically one of the Nerubians will die essentially.
Yeah, and this is the difficult thing as well. This late in the game for HelloLeeroy is you're up against the Zoolock, which will just continuously keep on life tapping. He's still got 21 life to work with, so it's not like he's going to run out of cards to play anytime soon.
Dark Peddler's a great draw here.
The more he taps, though, the more he plays into the hands of Grom.
Yeah.
And the Flame Imp as well. It's kind of, do you want to use that this late in the game? Because you're just kind of, at that point, you're starting to remove life taps from yourself.
What do you take here? I'd say Argent Squire, probably the best option to take, but you could take Mortal Coil because you trade your 4/4 in and then...
As well, with Mortal Coil, like, you're potentially playing into, if there are more Grim Patrons later, there's very likely one with 1 HP.
Yeah, I think...
Unfortunately, with the Juggle hitting, he's now got to hope that this Flame Imp Juggle hits the 1/2 so that he can use the Mortal Coil, but it doesn't.
Oh, no.
It hits face.
That was the risk by taking the Mortal Coil, obviously. So
I mean, you could quite simply just boom here, but does that keep you alive, though?
So you trade your axe into the Knife Juggler, you trade your 1/2 into the 4/4. It represents 5 damage on board. You'll have 9 health with the armor up, and you just boom, and you've got to hope to goodness that they don't have.
And then, honestly, actually, with the boom on board, there's little answer to it, assuming that they don't have the power overwhelming. And then next turn, you've got Grom. If you draw in a rage or anything along those lines,
you wouldn't even need it if he doesn't clear. You wouldn't even need it, right?
If you're worried about a power overwhelming, surely you just play a lower third.
Yeah.
Just
well, I
completely.
mean, at the end of the day, he's got 9 mana.
Yeah,
so
he's going to still be able to.
Yeah, it's still a 6. It's still a 6 mana cost. He's actually going to go for this play. I don't mind this play at all, actually, because now there's. I mean, and you're not dead to power overwhelming.
You could even just go face with Axe just to force them into having to try and deal with your Grom.
If you trade here, you're not dead to power overwhelming, right? You're 1-off lethal with power overwhelming, which is exactly.
If he taps and gets another power overwhelming, well, he doesn't. He gets a Sea Giant, which is not going to help him.
So he's 1-off lethal right now. One off. That was a play.
Painful.
That was a play that I didn't initially see, and he would have been dead if he'd made the play that I'd suggested. So HelloLeeroy has kept himself alive with a superior bit of play.
I think he's going to have to trade into the Gromash here.
Yeah, for sure. 1-off lethal.
This Mortal Coil is just like taunting him right now. Just sitting in his hand. There's absolutely nothing to use it on. Boom's going to come out.
There wasn't much else to take anyway, really, was there, apart from the Mortal Coil?
Do you just? I mean, do you just place Frothing Berserker here?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I feel like Frothing Berserker is kind of unnecessary board presence. I would actually just armor purely because it's so close to the end of the game.
I think armor to try and put yourself out of the range of something crazy like a Leroy Jenkins.
Leroy Jenkins power, but the Leroy Jenkins power overwhelming is he's seen 1 power overwhelming.
Still,
right?
There's another power overwhelming, but no Leroy Jenkins.
He's going to search. He's searching.
Pray.
Another Sea Giant. You can see Sottle's face. He's not happy with the outcome.
Well, the game is like he's not dead next turn, so maybe you have to just drop a Sea Giant realistically. And actually, this is an issue because you have to clear the Sea Giant from the side of HelloLeeroy right now, because if you don't, you simply lose the game. There's a power overwhelming right there. Obviously, he doesn't know that, but it's very likely that power overwhelming comes into play.
I think. Okay, I hope he trades here. I think he will because he's played Frothing Berserker. Yeah.
Yeah. If he doesn't trade, he loses. But yeah, so I mean, with the Frothing Berserker, you still have a big minion on board. You could even. I was gonna say you could Battle Rage. You only get 1 draw. It's not really worth.
So Sottle, given his hand, is going to have to tap this turn, right?
Into what, though? That's
Nothing.
my
I
question.
mean, you could you can't even tap into Defender of Argus because you've used too much mana.
Yeah. No, you haven't. Oh, yeah, you have. Sorry.
Because
I
you'll
can't
tap,
go.
you'll have 3 mana left. I think Sottle's just dead.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else you can draw, but I don't.
HelloLeeroy kind of knows. His arms are aloft.
Oh, Implosion, not. It's 9 mana because of the lower Theb.
And that's such a shame.
And HelloLeeroy continuing his streak.
Yeah.
There's no way Sottle can win here.
And Sottle for the second week in a row going 1 for 3.
And it was a strong start from Sottle.
It
but
was a strong
yeah.
start.
Unfortunately, the face shaman, he just didn't draw anything with that.